There are numerous iconic moments from Michael Jordan's career that extend outside the basketball world and come to epitomize the very idea of greatness. Jordan's shrug during Game 1 of the 1992 NBA Finals between the Bulls and the Blazers is one such moment. The combination of the confidence and ease with which Jordan gets off the shot, Cliff Robinson's resignation as a defender, and Jordan's comical gesture says it all, that this moment was highly unusual and something truly special. The play came after Jordan, who'd been terrible from three-point range most of his career, connected on 6 of 9 three-point attempts in just the first half of the game. There were a number of things that made this moment extra sweet for Jordan. At the time, he and Portland's franchise player Clyde Drexler were considered the two best players in the league. Shortly before the game, Jordan had easily won that year's MVP award, with Drexler coming in second in voting. However, many still regarded Drexler to be the better player, something which, understandably, Jordan took personally. Despite the comparisons to Drexler, Jordan felt that he was in a completely different tier to him. Ultimately, he had proved that point, at least to himself, when the Bulls won the series in 6 games, with Jordan taking home the Finals MVP trophy. And his performance in Game 1 was just the start of Jordan's attack against his critics. Ultimately, Jordan finished the match with 39 points. Magic Johnson was covering the game as a sideline reporter for NBC at the time, and he was the person that Jordan gestured to when he shrugged. The night before the game, the two had played cards, during which Jordan declared that he'd destroy Drexler and the Blazers in the upcoming game. But even Jordan didn't expect it to be via three-pointers, hence his confusion at his own success from beyond the arc. Another reason why that moment was so rewarding for Jordan was because he felt it made up for one of his worst shooting performances in his otherwise storied career. That is, his final score in the 1993 point contest, for which he delivered a historic performance. Unfortunately, unlike most of his other historic moments, this performance was historic for all the wrong reasons when he displayed the worst shooting in the history of the NBA's three-point contest.
Well, Jordan struggled the entire rack. He only ended up with 5 going in. NBA champs. Come on! It's like clubbing baby seals.
After introducing the three-point shot in the NBA for the 78-79 season for what was initially a trial period, the addition to the game proved to be so valuable for teams and popular amongst fans that it was permanently adopted by the league. Later, in 1986, the three-point contest was added to the All-Star Weekend events. Predictably, Larry Bird competed in the competition, and not only took home the inaugural trophy that year, but would also claim the award for the next 2 contests. While most players who challenged Bird put up respectable numbers, some were far from impressive, given that the competition was supposed to be the best of the best long-range shooters in the league. And it was for the 1988 contest that the worst ever score would be established that, as of 2022, remains the worst total in a round in the history of the three-point competition. The unfortunate distinction was accomplished by Detlef Schrempf. After being taken with the 8th pick in the 1985 draft by the Mavs, Schrempf quickly established himself as a solid offensive force with a highly unusual skill for a big man of that era of being able to score from deep. Admittedly, he didn't take a lot of shots from 3, but when he did, he was highly accurate with an average of around 47%. So it was understandable that in just his second season in the league, he was invited to participate in the 1987 three-point contest. And his initial performance in the competition was respectable as he played in all 3 rounds with decent scores of 19 in the first, 16 in the second, and 14 in the final round. The following year, heading into the competition, Schrempf had been struggling from deep all season, shooting around just 15%. Still, he was invited to compete given his previous success in the contest and his history as a solid scorer from deep. Unfortunately, Schrempf's in-game struggles would carry over into the All-Star weekend. To be fair, Schrempf did start off well, scoring 15 in the first round. However, it was in the second round where his shooting in the competition echoed the difficulties he had been having leading up to the contest.
Detlef Schrempf unofficially with only 5 points.
Ultimately, Schrempf actually made more than 5 baskets, but some were waved off as he had stepped on the line.
That last one didn't count. He was on the line, so he only has 1, and he's going to be in big trouble. I think there's no way for him to make it into the final.
While the only money ball he made was after the buzzer.
Schrempf has had a nightmare.
Following the contest, Schrempf retired from the competition, even though he did manage to regain his long-range game soon after, so much so that he even averaged around 51% from deep for the 94-95 season. Still, although he later made the All-Star game 3 times in 93, 95, and 97, largely because of his impressive shooting from long range, he never returned to the three-point contest. Presumably, Schrempf didn't ever participate in the competition again out of fear of putting up another embarrassing performance despite being one of the best three-point shooters in the history of the league. In reality though, Schrempf's overall results in 1988 aren't that bad. At least, not when compared to Jordan's in 1990, because although Jordan scored the same amount of points as Schrempf, when you actually compare the two performances, Jordan's is actually so much worse. In retrospect, it seems absurd that Jordan would have ever been invited to participate in the three-point contest, let alone actually take up the offer. With his impressive resume, Jordan is widely considered one of the greatest of all time, given that he excelled on both ends of the court except at one aspect of the game. That is, as multifaceted as he was, Jordan never mastered the three-point shot. Nowadays, regardless of someone's position, players are expected to have at least a somewhat reliable three-point shot as part of their game. However, prior to the 2000s, the league as a whole didn't rely on three-pointers as much as they do now. So, it's a testament to Jordan's offensive skills that he scored as many points as he did, without ever relying on his long-range game. But that's not due to a lack of trying. Jordan was always working on improving his game. For the 87-88 season, he determined to improve on the defensive end, which proved so effective that it led to him being named the 1988 Defensive Player of the Year. Later, for the 89-90 season, Jordan focused his attention on improving his long-range game, as he had averaged around just 18% from three-point range prior to the season. And leading up to the 1990 All-Star Weekend, Jordan was shooting around 39% from beyond the arc, one of the highest in the league. Admittedly, like he would throughout his whole career, he rarely ever attempted three-pointers during a game. Still, even though his impressive percentage was based on a very limited amount of attempts, his accuracy rate, combined with fans' desire to see him compete, led to Jordan being offered an opportunity to participate in the three-point contest, and him deciding to push himself well outside his comfort zone. Prior to the weekend, fans had become accustomed to seeing Jordan during the mid-season celebrations of the best in the league. Jordan had been a part of every single All-Star game since 1985, including achieving the rare feat of making the team as a rookie. Additionally, he was a two-time slam dunk champion, taking home the trophy in 1987 and 1988. Now, in 1990, just by entering the three-point contest, Jordan made history as he became the first ever player to compete in both the dunk and three-point competition.
The only player to compete in both the Gatorade Slam Dunk Championship and now the American Airlines ITT Sheridan Shootout.
Jordan's challengers were the reigning back-to-back three-point champion at the time, Larry Bird, along with Reggie Miller, Craig Elo, Bobby Hansen, Mark Price, John Sundvold, and Jordan's Bulls teammate Craig Hodges. Given the participants, Jordan was hardly expected to win the contest. Understandably though, fans still had high hopes for the star player, but it would prove to be one of the rare times when he failed to meet expectations.
It was a tough first time around for Michael Jordan. You see the look on his face.
All up, out of his 25 attempts, Jordan finished with just 5 points out of a possible 30, as he made a total of 5 baskets, none of which were the money ball. Predictably, Jordan was eliminated in the first round. Ultimately, Hodges won the competition, and would go on and win the next 2 following contests, joining Bird as one of only 2 players to win the competition 3 times in a row as of 2022. Ultimately, the 1990 three-point contest was the first and last time Jordan participated in the competition. He did indeed get better from beyond the arc, especially during the 95-96 season when he attempted significantly more shots with a well above average accuracy with a career high of around 42% from beyond the arc. With this in mind, it's surprising that Jordan never tried the three-point contest again, given his competitive nature that rarely ever saw him give up on anything. Presumably, after his failed baseball career between 1993 and 1995, he didn't want to risk another public embarrassment because, even though he and Schrempf both got the same score, Jordan's is clearly the worst performance in the history of the competition. Although the 2 players shot around 16% in their respective performances in the three-point contest, Schrempf's terrible outing was just 1 bad round out of 5, with the other 4 consisting of respectable numbers.
Schrempf with 15 to advance.
Conversely, Jordan's first-round elimination is his sole contribution to the contest. And, as of 2022, no player has delivered as bad a performance in the three-point contest as Jordan did in 1990, although some have come close to matching his historically poor display. Since 1990, the three-point contest has changed dramatically over the years. For the 2014 installment, a rack consisting entirely of money balls was added to the competition, which replaced one of the original 5 racks, increasing the maximum possible score up from 30 to 34 points. Later, for the 2020 contest, 2 additional Mountain Dew shots were placed on either side at the top of the key, worth 3 points each, raising the maximum possible score to 40, while the time limit was increased from 60 seconds to 70. However, despite all the changes that have been made, one thing has remained consistent since the 1990 All-Star Weekend. That is, that the worst performance in the competition's long history is a score of 5 out of a possible 30, with an accuracy rate of around just 16%. But a number of players have come close to threatening Jordan and Schrempf's historically bad performances. Antoine Walker was the first player to deliver a Jordan-like performance in the three-point contest for the 2003 competition, when he made just 6 baskets before the time ran out just before his last shot, giving him a total of 7 points, as he had fortunately managed to drain a money ball. Walker immediately retired from the competition, though remained a respectable catch-and-shoot option from long range for the rest of his career. 2 years later, for the 2005 contest, Vladimir Radmanovic entered the competition. Like Schrempf, Radmanovic was a big man whose game revolved heavily around shooting from long range. Yet, when it came to the contest, he made just 5 of 25 attempts, ending with a total score of 6, after sinking 4 regular balls and a money ball, as he made 1 less basket than Walker, and the same amount of baskets as Jordan, with only the money ball saving him from matching Jordan and Schrempf's historically low score. Understandably, Radmanovic never entered the competition again, even though he remained a solid long-range shooter throughout the rest of his extensive NBA career.
Spins out, gives to Radmanovic.
As of 2022, the last player to accidentally threaten Jordan and Schrempf's long-standing score was Kevin Durant during the 2011 contest. His 5 challenges for the competition included Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Daniel Gibson, James Jones, and Darrell Wright. Durant's inclusion in the contest was controversial, as he was the only player whose three-point accuracy leading up to the All-Star Weekend was below 40%, with an average of around 34% from three-point range headed into the competition. Meanwhile, Sean Williams and Matt Bonner were both shooting around 50% leading up to the contest. So, although Durant was a solid three-point shooter, his inclusion in the competition was clearly more about his star status than his long-range abilities. And it showed in his first-round performance when he matched Radmanovic, making just 5 baskets for a total of 6 points, with the fact that he sunk a money ball saving him from joining Jordan and Schrempf with the worst ever score in the history of the contest. Surprisingly, Durant agreed to compete in the competition the following year when he was offered the opportunity to replace an injured Joe Johnson. Remarkably, despite his terrible shooting in the 2011 contest, Durant actually delivered the impressive performance fans had expected the year before, as he scored 20 points in the first round on his way to the finals, where he tied with Kevin Love with a score of 16. Durant then scored 14, falling 2 points shy of Love, who was declared the winner in his first attempt at the contest. After the event, Durant retired from the competition, despite actually improving his three-point accuracy over the following years. Ultimately, with all the changes to the three-point contest that have resulted in the maximum potential score going up and up, it's become less and less likely that Jordan and Schrempf's scores will ever be broken. Fortunately for Jordan, as embarrassing as his performance in the 1990 contest was, he only had to tolerate all the jokes at his expense for a couple of years before his performance in Game 1 of the 1992 finals silenced his critics, because even if he failed to excel at the three-point shot 2 years earlier, he was doing so now on the biggest stage when it really counted. Furthermore, Jordan's Game 1 performance of 35 points in the first half, largely due to his three-point shooting, set a record of the most points scored in a half for a finals match, which had previously been established by Elgin Baylor when he amassed 33 points in the first half of the 1962 finals between the Lakers and the Celtics, on his way to scoring a total of 61 points in the game. Also, in February 2022, former Italian player Gianmarco Pizzecco revealed that, in addition to his phenomenal three-point display in the 1992 finals, Jordan also redeemed himself from beyond the arc away from the cameras. Back in the early 2000s, while Jordan was preparing for his return to the NBA with the Washington Wizards, Pizzecco, who was playing in the NBA Summer League at the time, claimed to have witnessed Jamal Crawford challenge Jordan to a three-point contest. Initially, Crawford wagered $1,000. Jordan won and raised the stakes to $5,000 for a rematch. This time, Crawford won. Jordan then suggested that they wager their cars for the next contest. Crawford agreed, putting his Mercedes up against Jordan's Ferrari. Jordan easily won the shootout, then proceeded to remove Crawford's personalized license plates and drive off with the Mercedes, which means, if the story is indeed true, Jordan well and truly made up for his failings in the 1993 point contest in the most stylish and most Jordan of ways.
Off the loose ball, Jordan tees it up, and there it is. He hits it, the 18th player in NBA history to reach 20,000 points.
In retrospect, the fact that Jordan was invited to participate, let alone actually competed in the three-point contest, seems incredibly strange. But when you contextualize it, there's a logical explanation. Given how competitive he was, it makes sense that Jordan would want to challenge himself to succeed at something that he wasn't naturally good at. And headed into the 1990 All-Star Weekend, it looked as though Jordan had indeed succeeded at improving his three-point game, as he was legitimately one of the best long-range shooters in the league at the time. But Jordan wasn't perfect. Even in his prime, he missed wide-open dunks, shot air balls, and was rejected at the rim. And when it comes to the three-point shot, he also failed at that. Unfortunately for him, his greatest failure with the shot happened to be on one of the biggest stages in the world. Jordan and Schrempf's respective 5-point performances in the three-point competition remain the worst displays in the history of the contest. And because of all the changes to the rules over the years, the two players will almost certainly retain their unfortunate distinction for the foreseeable future. Although both Schrempf and Jordan share the dubious honor of having tallied the fewest points in a round for the three-point contest, it's debatable which of the two players the historically low score reflects worse on. On one hand, this distinction is more embarrassing for Schrempf because three-point shooting was a fundamental aspect of his game. On the other hand, Jordan is arguably the greatest player of all time, so people's expectations were much higher headed into the contest, and his failings during the competition are more embarrassing in retrospect because of everything else he succeeded at. Still, as bad as Jordan's performance was, it's impressive that he was still at least willing to push himself well outside his comfort zone and try something difficult. Furthermore, when someone finishes their career with more rings than points scored in a three-point contest, there's hardly anything to be embarrassed about.
Hey, you only got 3 now. I get 6. I would get that foul. You only got 3 now.
You right, I can't say none of that.